Hello, welcome to VMC. I'm Dr. M. Today we're going to cover the items that you should have in a pet first aid kit. This should be something that you should have, in your house in the case of an emergency, but that you would also take with you if you're on vacation with your pets or if you're hiking somewhere, anywhere that you go that your pets go as well. Join me, you'll learn something. So first and foremost, it's very important that all pets are labeled and identified. The most durable way of doing this is with a microchip, and that's one of the reasons that we recommend all pets have microchips placed. The microchip is about the size of a grain of rice, and it gets inserted under the skin between the shoulder blades. Collars that have the name and phone number embroidered into them. A lot of the times the tags can get ripped off or can fall off. It can be really tough to do this safely because, especially for cats, but even for dogs, a breakaway collar is generally recommended because the problem that can happen is if the pet gets stuck on something and they're with the collar and they're tugging and tugging and tugging, they can strangle themselves. Almost all cat collars these days are breakaway, which is great, but it's not something that's as common for dogs yet. At least a few times a year, we'll end up seeing a dog that has just been playing with another dog and their tooth or jaw gets stuck under the collar and it ends up strangling the dog wearing that collar. And I've seen that happen often enough that I would only ever put breakaway collars on my dog. If your dog and your cat wears a harness, then having a tag that is embroidered on or that isn't just dangling. You'll have to figure out what works best for your particular pet in your particular situation, but definitely get a microchip and then add a secondary form of identification. If you are going to be traveling or hiking with your pets, it's very important to consider, okay, if say my dog gets injured on a hike, would I be able to carry her out? And if I cannot lift her and carry her all the way back to the vehicle, then I need to consider some sort of pet stretcher, or there are also some kind of backpack type devices that are only meant to be used in the case of an emergency, that kind of sling the dog and then you carry them on your back. They might get agitated when they're painful or hurt. Then you should also make sure to carry a basket muzzle with you so that the dog can still pant and drink water, but that they're not able to bite, because if they get hurt, you can't blame them for feeling really angry about being handled or touched, as they're in a lot of pain, and keeping the people safe who are trying to help the animal is very important. And it's also crucial that you practice using these tools before the event of the emergency. One of the most common reasons you will need a first aid kit is for cleaning or bandaging wounds until you can get to a veterinary clinic. So the saying goes, the solution to pollution is dilution, and to rinse out wounds, you should use saline or you can use water. Do not, and I'm going to repeat this, absolutely do not use hydrogen peroxide. Not only does that hurt, it also kills the cells that are trying to help the body to heal, and it is not an appropriate thing to use on wounds. And you also should have some large syringes, and you can use that to draw up some of the flesh and then get some pressure if you're really having a hard time rinsing out some of the debris that's in a wound. You should also have some tongue depressors or popsicle sticks, depending on the size of your pet, as those can be used temporarily to help as a bit of a splint. Ideally, you would be talking to your veterinarian about if a splint is appropriate before you applied one, because putting one on incorrectly can cause more harm than good. And you will also need non-adhesive wound coverings. There are a number that are on the market, and you should also have a number of rolls of gauze. Make sure that you are only placing the gauze on, tight enough that it stays on, but not so tight that you're causing any blood flow issues. And if you're unsure of how to do it, it would be better just to put a clean towel or face cloth or something over the wound and go that way rather than incorrectly applying a bandage to your pet. It's also important to have a tourniquet in your kit just in case your pet is bleeding excessively and you're unable to get it to stop. A note on bleeding: the clotting cascade takes 7 to 10 minutes in order to fully form a clot. So if your pet is bleeding, the appropriate thing to do is put a washcloth or towel or anything you have on top of the wound and hold pressure. And if the blood starts to come through that covering, then you put another one on top. Do not remove any of them until after your timer that you set for 10 minutes has gone off. You should also have bandage scissors, and it's also a good idea to have a pair of tweezers along in the event of your pet getting some sort of foreign material in them. However, if this is something like multiple porcupine quills or something that is a deep or a large wound, then you should not pull it, as it's very painful and your pet will need pain medication and sedation before that happens. But also with like large sticks or in a hunting accident, I have seen dogs with arrows before. That arrow or stick or other whatever it is that's inside of your pet's body will be stopping bleeding by filling the hole that it's created. So if you pull it out, then your pet might bleed uncontrollably on the inside, which you won't be able to stop. And the other concern is if you try to remove it improperly, that you will cause more harm than good. Tweezers are really for like picking out small pieces of contamination that might have happened in a wound. You should also have some sterile tears or a sterile eye flush that you can use in the event that your pet gets something in their eye and that you need to flush their eye to get it out. And you should also in the emergency kit have about 2 weeks of all of their preventives and medications that they might need. So this means heartworm prevention, flea prevention, if they're on any medication, whether it's pain management or for their thyroid or they have diabetes, that sort of thing. You should always have a good 2 weeks of medications on hand, and make sure that you are rotating those in and out of stock regularly, because if they go past their expiry date, then they're no use to anybody. So going through your kit at least a few times a year and making sure that all the items are still good is a necessary thing to do. It's also important in your kit to have food and water for your pet. And so you should have a couple of weeks of those ideally, whether that's canned food or kibble or a mixture of both. And then of course make sure to account for the water that your pet will need. It's also important to have latex or non-latex exam gloves in your emergency kit. You should also have a digital thermometer that you can use along with a water-based sterile lube. That way you can take your pet's temperature should you need to. It's also a very good idea to have a few washcloths or hand towels, that sort of thing, in this kit. What you should do if your pet has ingested a toxin is to call a TOXIN hotline, and they can advise you on whether you need to get to an emergency clinic or not. And you should call them while you are driving to the vet clinic, because these things are time sensitive. So it's very important that treatment is started, as soon as possible after toxin ingestion. And if the Poison Hotline recommends to you that vomiting is indicated, then you can discuss with them, depending on how far you are from a vet clinic, depending on what your pet has eaten, depending on how much they have eaten. Is this one of those rare, true emergencies where hydrogen peroxide is less risky than trying to get to a vet clinic? So these sorts of decisions must never be made without first consulting a veterinary professional. In the case of a toxin ingestion, do not try to treat your pet on your own. call the TOXIN hotline, get information from them, and follow their advice. That is the best and safest thing that you can do for your pet. It should also be noted that for cats, there are zero options other than a vet clinic. One last item that can be helpful is to have some liquid dish detergent. This can be used to gently wash off oil spills or maybe toxins that have gotten onto the fur of your pet, or if they have gotten into something that's sticky or could be dangerous if left on the fur for too long, then having some liquid dish detergent can be a great way to try to remove a lot of those things. Make sure that in your emergency kit that you have your emergency contact information, as well as a couple of other backup people, as well as your veterinarian's contact information, so that if you are also injured in this emergency event, that whoever is helping you and your animals can use that contact information to get your animals the care that they need. I will link in the doobly-doo a few resources that have some great checklists for you. Please comment down below if you have a video topic that you want me to cover in a future video. Like the video if you've learned something. It really helps me out and lets me know if I am covering these topics in a way that you are finding helpful. If you are not already subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. My goal is to reach 1,000 subscribers, and I would really appreciate your help in getting there. I look forward to hearing from all of you if you have any questions, and we will see you in the next video. All right, bye.